In this lecture, we will review various issues related to obtaining behavioral measures, which can include physiological measures that address various elements of human behavior. The first type of behavioral measure is referred to as behavioral trace. And in this case, a behavioral measure is obtained that relies on evidence left behind by a participant who is no longer present. And one example here is evaluating the workplace setting. So the environment that is left behind will reflect the person that was in that environment. And that is of concern because it may influence subsequent responses. From a research perspective, those traces can be used as evidence related to different elements of human behavior, and we'll look at another example shortly. Behavioral observation involves just that. It's the direct observation of a researcher of a research participant engaged in some sort of task. And this is very commonly used within the educational setting, where a researcher will directly observe children playing, as an example. Behavioral choice is an experimental approach in which participants will purposely select from a range of options provided to that research participant. And that can be done through a survey, a questionnaire, or other hands-on experimental manipulations. This chart summarizes the three basic types of behavioral measures and covers a couple of different examples here. So with behavioral trace, we see that examining a wear level in the floor, as an example, will provide researchers with a sense of the foot traffic related to the popularity of an exhibit. In terms of behavioral observation, the timing of how long it takes a person to solve a puzzle that is unsolvable is direct observation. Now, with the behavioral observation, this can be done in a quantitative way, so using a stopwatch to measure that length of time, or can also be done qualitatively by observing children playing. And behavioral choice, in this example, providing a person the option to work in a group or alone as a measure of group affiliation, is also possible. In terms of evaluating behavioral measures, there are some concerns that researchers should be aware of, and once researchers are aware of these issues, steps can be taken to mitigate the effects on the outcome variable. One is participant reactivity, where the research participants may act differently or unnaturally because they know someone is watching them. And in this example, in this photo, here we see a person on an exercise bike, and the person's exhaled air moves through this hose and is analyzed chemically. However, the effort that the person exerts on the bike may be strongly influenced by the fact that there are a number of people in the vicinity, including an authority figure, directly observing. So the research participant may react in a way that may likely affect the outcome measure. Unobtrusive measures are those strategies that allow for observation and assessment without the participant's awareness. And so, in one sense, researchers should not interfere with that collection and allow participants to provide that unobtrusive answer to a survey, a questionnaire, or some other means of obtaining information. There may be an intentional deception on the part of the researchers, or there is what's called serendipitous observations. So a serendipitous observation is the information or behavior of a research participant that was not anticipated, that may give the researchers an additional clue into what may influence how a person behaves in a particular environment. So questions as to whether intentional deceptions, serendipitous observations are unethical, the easy solution is to take the question to the Research Ethics Board. And the Research Ethics Board will provide an answer that is consistent with the policies and procedures of not just the institution, but of the guidelines within Canada that is grounded in public law. There are four basic types of outcome or dependent variables. There are what's referred to as behavioral measures, and these, in a very general sense, this relates to an assessment of a person's behavior that can be captured qualitatively or quantitatively. Attitudinal measures, which are often obtained through questionnaires or surveys, measures a person's, as simply as the term indicates, their attitude or their feeling toward a particular topic. Cognitive measures are those measures that will assess memory or intelligence, and physiological measures are those that will assess some biologically observed characteristic. And we'll take a look at two of the examples here on the right-hand side. So we see this this picture here that is used as a short-term memory test within children from kindergarten through grade 12, and this is a test that was developed and administered and currently administered by the University of Washington as a cognitive assessment. The picture below is the typical what's called lie detector test. And so in a lie detector test, the assessor here, or the researcher, is evaluating heart rate, breathing rate, and something called the galvanic skin response through the fingertips, although it doesn't seem to be assessed here. But this response on the right-hand side are tracings of these physiological measures that relate to emotional arousal if the person is quote-unquote lying. Heart rate would go up, respiration would go up, and a measure of the electrical resistance through the skin would all indicate activation of the sympathetic nervous system and the person under mental stress. One final point related to to various measurements of human behavior include what are called floor and ceiling effects. And so a ceiling effect in a research tool indicates that the tool has an upper boundary. So if the tool has a very low ceiling, then it had the upper boundary is set too low. So the participants, in a sense, hit the ceiling much sooner than the researcher may intend. The floor effect indicates that the lowest response on a survey or questionnaire is actually set too high, that a participant may in fact provide a lower response to a question, but if the tool doesn't provide that opportunity, then the survey instrument would be influenced by a floor effect. What we see in this research study published in 2010, in this study, young adults engaged in weight-bearing exercise for a particular amount of time, and because participants exercised to their maximal capability, they all exercised for a different amount of time, and so that is expressed as a percent maximum duration. What was assessed in this study is the participants' subjective level of effort or strain or exertion that periodically during that exercise, using this this scale this rating scale that is a commonly used scale in many exercise-based studies and is often used in exercise and training sessions, where a rating of 6 is reported by a person to have no exertion at all. So the person under resting conditions would provide a rating of 6. At the highest end of exertion, or extremely hard, the person would rate a 19. What we see here in assessing perceived exertion as a function of exercise, we see that the perceived exertion increases slowly, and as exercise duration continues, we see that the effort or the exertion by the person continues to be reported at higher and higher levels, and then we start to see this flattening of the curve near the top. So at the very bottom, here we see what's called floor effect, where the participants under resting conditions can only rate a 6. Some rate different numbers, and that's reflected in the error bars. So you see very small error bars at the very bottom, and you see very, very small error bars at the very top as the participants rated a number actually higher than 19. So a 20 would indicate maximal effort. And so the error bars in this case, from a statistical perspective, would indicate the possible presence of a floor and a ceiling effect when using the rating scale, and the wider range of responses throughout the duration of the exercise. So this ends our lecture on Unit